Hi everyone, so today we're going to take some time and talk about one of the winery that's very dear and near to my heart, and that is Verite. Especially now, the fall allocation is starting to happen, and I feel like sometimes Verites get lost in the shuffle. It's not quite as widely coat after as a lot of the other fall releases I've seen, but I do believe it's one of the best wine coming out of California, especially the Sonoma region. So let's talk about it a little bit today. So verite, it is a French word for truth. And the whole idea is to combine old world experiences with new world terroir. Obviously, it being from Sonoma County, the new world terroir, that's where it comes from. But the winemaker is Pierre Sion, who was born and raised in Bordeaux, France, has many years of winemaking experience over the Loire Valley in Bordeaux. So he is what we were talking about as far as the old world experience that comes into play. So him and one of the biggest landowner in California, which is Jack Jackson. I'm sure the wine that everyone has heard of, Kendall Jackson. So Jack Jackson and Pierre Sion has been friends since the 90s, and they visited Sonoma together back in 97. Pierre Sion fell in love with the terroir of Sonoma, and they decided to start this joint venture together of Verite, and their very first vintage was the 1998 vintage. Another thing that's really cool about Verite is that Pierre Sion is really big believer of microcruise or little microclimates. He actually he uses a bunch of tiny little vineyards all over Sonoma. Like I said earlier, Jack Jackson is actually one of the biggest landowner or winery landowner in all of California. So he prioritized Verite out of all of his projects. So essentially anything he owns in Sonoma, Pierre Sion's got a first crack at, looking at each one of the parcel and deciding the best wines that will go into his 3 different labels every single year, which is quite amazing. They're just aren't simply any other winery that has the resources to be able to cherry pick from so many different climates in order to do the best blend every single year. Now for Verite, they always make 3 different labels and gets a little confusing sometimes, but it is kind of his expression of the art. So the 3 different ones are always La Muse, La Joie, and Le Désert. So we'll go through them one by one. First thing first, 2017 is the current release, so this is the vintage I'm going to talk about. And for 2017 was actually quite a great year for them. Mild spring, warm summer. They started harvesting around September 2nd, and they didn't finish harvesting until about October 2nd. So it took them a whole month. Again, having 50 plus different micro vineyard or micro plots really stretch out their entire harvest season. It's not just one big piece of land and they harvest all at the same time. So it makes it really unique and really interesting. But then also because of them finishing harvesting around October 2nd, they were lucky enough not to be affected by the 2017 wildfire that broke out in Sonoma, I think right around October 8th, October 9th that year. So they're really lucky and you don't have to worry about any smoke taint in the 2017 vintage. And 2017 also is a great year for Pierre Sion as it marks his 20-year anniversary at Verite and apparently 50 years anniversary of winemaking. So quite a significant year for him. Now let's talk about the 3 different ones. The first one is La Muse. Muse roughly translates into inspiration, and this is a Merlot dominant blend. Remember, Pierre is from Bordeaux, so you will see that there's a lot of Bordeaux inspiration behind his 3 label. So La Muse is almost always 100% Merlot. In the 2017 vintage, it was 100% Merlot. I like to point out that generally when you're thinking about this, the cold Napa wine that always receive really high points, most of people equates it to a very big masculine style of wine because that's usually what the cold wine style is. But I just want to point out that La Muse and actually all 3 of their wine are very modest in their oak usage and their alcohol percentage. So La Muse is only about 14.3% alcohol, which is almost unheard of when it comes to your big high scoring Napa Red. Anyways, the second wine will be La Joie, and that means the joy. So the joy is more focused on a cab driven blend. And in the 2017 vintage, it was about 70% Cabernet Sauvignon, about 16% Cabernet Franc, 10% Merlot, a little bit of Cab Franc, and don't forget a couple percentage of Petit Verdot to really spice things up. And once again, La Joie is still very modest at about 14.4% alcohol. Drinks very elegant and very reminiscent of the Bordeaux style, old world style winemaking, rather than the really over the top, over extracted, and over alcoholic and oaky California style winemaking. And last but not least is their Le Désert. Le Désert is Le Desire, which is my personal favorite because I have a special place in my heart for Cabernet Franc. I love how exotic, how floral, how just different it tastes. And it is not an easy grape to grow, or it's also not easy grape to have as the dominant grape in a blend, hence why you don't see that very often. So I really applaud Pierre to have a special place for Cab Franc and have this Le Désert that is made mostly with Cab Franc. And this year, the Le Désert is 80% Cab Franc, 17% Merlot, and 3% Malbec, and again, only right at 14% alcohol. Everything is done very tastefully. The reason why I wanted to give them a little more time is because I think this is such a great kind of bridge wine. If you are someone who likes really huge, big, oaky wine, this is not the wine for you. But if you usually lean towards the old world style wine, the more Bordeaux style wine, or wines that show a lot more terroir, like for example, one of your favorite wines, the Rich Montebello, because it's so different from the rest of the Napa cold cap wine, and you want something that shows more terroir and more personality and more minerality, I absolutely think that La Verite is one of the best wine to represent the very sexy and very versatile terroir that Sonoma have. And all three of the wine only receive about 17 months of mostly new French oak. Again, very tasteful and very mild compared to most of your big California cold wine. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that ever since its 1998 debut vintage, in the last 20 years, they have received 16 100 points from just Robert Parker alone. That's not adding Decanter, Wine Enthusiast, Venice, and Wine Spectator. They're every single vintage it comes out, I've just pretty much just 97 points and above. Now, unfortunately, it being a very interesting pandemic year, I was not able to taste the new vintage release. But from my many years of experience with Verite, has never disappointed. And of course, this year, they once again get scoring of 98, 99, 100, and giving away 2017 ended up for them. I have no doubt it's going to be another legendary year as well. And again, another reason why I feel like Verite doesn't get the recognition that it deserves is because it has quite a small allocation and it's not quite as widely marketed, I feel like, as a lot of the other Napa big shots. One of the reasons for that is the insider story that Jazz Jackson loved the wine so much, he was actually having a hard time selling them. He was kind of hoarding it for himself for the longest time and would not allow pretty much any allocation to go on the market. He unfortunately passed away back in 2011, but it wasn't until then when the predecessor took over and they're rebalancing and they're kind of relaunching Verite and marketing it correctly and actually letting out allocation, and I think it's starting to finally get the international attention and the collector's attention like it deserves. The price is going up every single year because their wine quality does reflect it. So I always recommend stocking it up while you can, because I have no doubt that the price is only going to continue to climb. With that being said, if you're interested in my very small 2017 allocation, feel free to email me or DM me below. I'll put a link down below for you to contact me. Also, I'll put another link below for when I did another tasting with Pierre Sion a couple years ago for you to take a look at a couple of my tasting notes from their previous vintage. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful time. Until next time, bye.